The stars were dying in the Valara home system. At least that's what it looked like to Elder Solera, as she watched the orbital defense platforms explode one by one. Each burst of light represented hundreds of lives lost, thousands of families destroyed. The Krathul Dominion had arrived 3 days ago, and the Valara people were losing badly. Solara's 4 hands trembled as she activated the emergency broadcast system. Her insectoid eyes, usually calm and reflective, now showed pure terror. The Valara were a peaceful species. They traded, they philosophized, they created beautiful art. They never built weapons strong enough to fight an empire like the Krathul. "This is Elder Solera of the Valara Council," she spoke into the transmitter, her voice breaking. "We are under attack. Our world is dying. Our people are being taken as slaves. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We are broadcasting on all known frequencies. Please, if there is anyone out there who values life, who fights for the weak, we beg you to answer." She paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "We have heard stories of the humans, the ones from the Deathworld called Earth. The legends say they are fierce warriors who protect the innocent. We do not know if these stories are true. We do not even know if humans still exist. But if you are out there, humanity, please hear us. We are dying." The transmission went out into the void. Solara didn't know if anyone would hear it. She didn't know if anyone would care. Outside her council chamber, she could hear the sounds of Krathul ships landing in the capital city. The screams had already begun. 3,000 light-years away, on the edge of human space, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was having the worst shift of his life. The relay station he commanded was old, boring, and in the middle of nowhere. Nothing ever happened here. That was the point. After the war with the Cathari Collective ended 100 years ago, humanity had pulled back from the galaxy. They built their worlds in isolation, healed their wounds, and tried to forget the horrors they had committed. Jake was drinking his 5th cup of coffee when the station's computer started beeping. At first he thought it was another malfunction. The relay station was ancient, always breaking down. But the beeping continued, insistent and urgent. He pulled up the source. It was a distress signal, a real one, from a species he had never heard of before. The Valara. Jake listened to the transmission 3 times. Each time he felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had studied history in the academy. He knew what happened when peaceful species encountered aggressive empires. It never ended well for the peaceful ones. The part that caught his attention was the mention of humans. These aliens had heard of Earth. They were calling for help specifically from humanity. Jake didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Humanity hadn't answered a distress call in decades. They didn't get involved anymore. That was the agreement after the Cathari War. Stay home, stay safe, stay forgotten. But something about Elder Solara's voice got to him. The pure desperation, the way she begged for help. Jake had a daughter back on Earth. She was only 6 years old. He tried to imagine her voice making that same plea, and his hands clenched into fists. He forwarded the message to Earth Command with a simple note attached. Distress call from unknown species, requesting guidance. Then he waited, expecting nothing. The bureaucrats on Earth would file it away, hold meetings, and eventually decide it wasn't their problem. 4 hours later, his console exploded with incoming messages. Priority 1, maximum encryption. Jake's hands shook as he decoded them. What he read made his blood run cold. Reactivate Protocol Shadow Dawn. Authorization code. Ghost Fleet Actual. Stand by for fleet deployment. Maintain communication blackout. Tell no one. Jake stared at the screen. Shadow Dawn. He had heard whispers about it in the academy. Late-night stories told by drunk instructors who had served in the Cathari War. The Ghost Fleet. The ships humanity built when they decided that mercy was a luxury they couldn't afford. The weapons they created when they realized the galaxy was full of monsters. He had always assumed those stories were exaggerations. Or myths. The kind of tales veterans tell to make themselves feel important. But here was the activation code, real and official, glowing on his screen. His console beeped again. New orders. Prepare relay station for fleet coordination. Maintain surveillance on Valara system. Report any changes immediately. Jake got to work. His hands moved automatically, setting up communication protocols and sensor arrays. But his mind was racing. If the Ghost Fleet was real, if they were actually going to deploy it, then the galaxy was about to remember something it had spent a century trying to forget. Humanity could be monsters when they needed to be. On Earth, in a quiet house overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Claire Donovan was watering her garden when the call came. She had been retired for 15 years. She grew tomatoes, read books, and tried not to think about the war. She tried not to remember the planets she had glassed, the ships she had destroyed, the millions who had died on her orders. The phone rang. She almost didn't answer it, but something made her pick up. "Admiral Donovan," a voice said. "This is Fleet Command. We need you back." "I'm retired," Claire said flatly. "We're activating Shadow Dawn." Claire's hand tightened on the phone. For a long moment, she said nothing. In her mind, she saw the ships, the massive dreadnoughts hidden in the deep places of the solar system, the weapons that could crack moons, the AI systems that learned how to kill more efficiently with every battle. "Why?" she finally asked. "Distress call. A peaceful species being slaughtered by an empire. They asked for humanity specifically." Claire closed her eyes. She had hoped she would never have to command a warship again. She had hoped humanity could stay hidden, stay peaceful, stay forgotten. But if someone was calling for help, if innocent people were dying, could she really say no? "When do we deploy?" she asked. 48 hours. We're gathering the crew now. Captain Ben Hayes and Commander Lisa Grant are already on their way to the shipyards. Claire looked at her garden. The tomatoes were almost ripe. She wondered if she would live to see them harvested. "I'll be there," she said. Across the solar system, 30 massive ships began to wake up. They had been sleeping in the dark for 100 years, waiting for this moment. Their reactors hummed to life. Their weapon systems activated. Their AI cores started running combat simulations. The Ghost Fleet was rising from the shadows. And somewhere in the Valara system, the Krathel Dominion had no idea what was coming for them. The Pacific Ocean had kept humanity's secrets for a long time. Beneath the waves, deeper than any civilian vessel could reach, the first of the ghost ships waited. The UHSN Revenant sat in its underwater berth like a sleeping dragon. It had been built during the darkest days of the Cathari War, when humanity realized that playing fair meant losing everything. Admiral Claire Donovan stood on the observation deck of the descent shuttle, watching the water grow darker as they dropped toward the hidden shipyard. Beside her, Captain Ben Hayes stared out with wide eyes. He had never seen a ship like the Revenant before. Nobody had, except for the few veterans who survived the war. "It's bigger than I imagined," Ben said quietly. Claire nodded. "It's 3 miles long. The reactors alone could power a small city. When we built it, we weren't thinking about efficiency or cost. We were thinking about survival." The shuttle docked with the massive ship's port hangar. As they walked through the corridors, emergency lighting flickered on automatically. The ship recognized Claire's biometrics, remembered her command codes. Everything was exactly as she had left it 15 years ago. Commander Lisa Grant was already in the engine room when they arrived. She had been one of the lead designers on the Ghost Fleet project. While Claire commanded and Ben strategized, Lisa made the impossible technology actually work. She looked up from a console, grease on her face, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "The reactors are warming up nicely," she reported. "Another 6 hours and we'll have full power. The quantum drives need some calibration, but they're functional. Admiral, these ships are still the most advanced vessels humanity has ever built." Claire allowed herself a small smile. "How many crew members have reported for duty?" "All of them," Lisa said. "Every single person we called answered. We have volunteers coming in from colonies across the solar system. They're young, Admiral. Most of them weren't even born when the Cathari War ended. But they've heard the stories. They want to be part of this." That worried Claire more than she wanted to admit. Young crew members were enthusiastic but inexperienced. They had grown up in peacetime watching entertainment shows about space battles. They thought war was glorious. They didn't understand the nightmares that came after. But she didn't have time to train career veterans. The Valara were dying right now. Every hour they delayed meant more innocent people enslaved or killed. "Get them organized," Claire ordered. "I want department heads assigned by tonight. We launch in 36 hours. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. On Mars, beneath the red dust, 5 dreadnoughts emerged from underground hangars that had been sealed for generations. In the asteroid belt, hidden among the rocks, weapons platforms and support vessels activated their systems. On Europa, under the ice, Marines trained in zero-gravity combat drills. The Ghost Fleet had 30 major warships. Each one was designed for a specific role. The dreadnoughts, like the Revenant, served as mobile command centers and main battle cruisers. The destroyers were fast attack vessels equipped with experimental railguns. The carriers held squadrons of fighters with AI-assisted piloting systems. And then there were the special weapons ships carrying devices that were never officially acknowledged. Lieutenant Danny Cole reported to his fighter squadron with a mixture of excitement and terror. He was 24 years old, fresh out of the academy, and about to pilot a combat spacecraft for real. Not a simulation, not a training exercise, but actual combat against an enemy that wanted him dead. His squadron leader, a grizzled veteran named Chief Pilot Karen White, gathered them in the briefing room. "Listen up," Karen said. "I know most of you have never seen real combat. That's okay. The fighters you'll be flying have AI co-pilots that have logged millions of hours in simulated battles. Trust them. They'll keep you alive if you listen." She brought up a hologram of the Valara system. "Our mission is reconnaissance and harassment. We jump in ahead of the main fleet, identify enemy positions, and cause chaos. Make them think we're the main attack so they don't see the dreadnoughts coming." "Questions?" Danny raised his hand. "Chief, what if we encounter heavy resistance? What if there are more enemy ships than expected?" Karen looked at him with hard eyes. "Then some of us won't come back." "That's war, Lieutenant. But every enemy ship focused on us is one that's not shooting at civilians. Remember that." Down in the Marine barracks, Sergeant Maya Torres was checking her equipment for the 5th time. She had served in the Colonial Defense Force for 6 years, mostly doing anti-piracy operations. This was different. This was an actual war against an empire that conquered planets for fun. Her commanding officer, Major Pete Carson, walked through the barracks. "Torres, you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be, sir," Maya replied. "What's our mission profile?" "Boarding operations and ground assault. Intelligence says the Krathul have been taking prisoners. If we find any slave ships, we're going in to get those people out. That means close quarters combat in confined spaces against enemies that are bigger, stronger, and meaner than us." Maya checked her rifle's magazine. "We've got one advantage, sir. We're from Earth. High gravity, dangerous wildlife, extreme weather. We evolved to survive the worst. These Krathul have been bullying peaceful species. They've never fought someone who punches back." Pete nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit. Remember, Marines don't retreat. We advance in different directions." In the Revenant's engineering section, Lucas Wright and his team worked around the clock to bring the ancient systems online. Lucas was a civilian contractor, a genius with quantum mechanics who had been recruited specifically for this mission. He had never been in the military, never fired a gun, but he understood the ship's systems better than anyone. "The quantum disruptors are functional," he reported to Lisa Grant. "But I'm worried about the safety protocols. These weapons were designed to tear apart spacetime. If something goes wrong, we could create a black hole." Lisa looked at the specifications. "How likely is that?" 0.003% chance per firing, Lucas said. "But we're planning to fire them hundreds of times in battle. The cumulative risk gets significant." "What's the alternative?" Lisa asked. Lucas thought about the Valara, about the distress call, about the innocent people being slaughtered. "There is no alternative," he admitted. "We need these weapons. I'll just have to monitor them constantly and pray nothing breaks." On the bridge of the Revenant, Claire Donovan sat in the captain's chair for the first time in 15 years. The seat remembered her. The ship remembered her. Every system came online smoothly, recognizing her command authority. Ben Hayes took his position as tactical officer. "Admiral, all fleet elements are reporting ready status. We have 28 dreadnoughts, 47 destroyers, 12 carriers, and 9 special weapons platforms. Total crew complement 42,000 personnel." Claire pulled up the navigation charts. The Valara system was 3 weeks away at maximum speed. 3 weeks while people died. It felt like an eternity. "All ships, this is Admiral Donovan," she broadcast across the fleet. 100 years ago, humanity fought a terrible war. We did things we're not proud of. We used weapons that should never have been built. When that war ended, we swore we were done with violence. We retreated to our corner of the galaxy and tried to forget." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But today we received a distress call from a peaceful species being destroyed by an empire. They called for us specifically. They've heard the stories about humanity, about what we can do when we're pushed, about what we become when innocent people need protecting." Claire's voice hardened. "The Krathul Dominion is about to learn that those stories are true. They're about to discover why the galaxy feared us. We are the Ghost Fleet, we are humanity's answer to monsters, and we do not leave the innocent to die. All ships prepare for quantum jump. We launch in 2 hours. The crew erupted in cheers across every ship. They didn't fully understand what they were getting into. They didn't know that war would change them forever. But they knew they were doing something important, something necessary. The Ghost Fleet began its final preparations. Weapons were loaded. Reactors reached full power. Navigation computers calculated the jump coordinates. And deep in the ship's computer cores, the AI systems began their work. They analyzed every battle humans had ever fought. They studied Krathul tactics from intelligence reports. They prepared thousands of combat scenarios. When the fleet launched, it would be the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. The Krathul had conquered 17 systems with overwhelming force and brutal efficiency. They had never fought Deathworlders before. The quantum jump through space was violent and disorienting. One moment the Ghost Fleet was orbiting Earth's moon. The next they were hurtling through dimensions that human minds weren't designed to comprehend. The ship's hulls groaned under the stress. Crew members gripped their stations as reality bent around them. When they emerged into normal space, they were 2 weeks away from the Valara system. The journey had begun. Lieutenant Danny Cole floated in his bunk, unable to sleep. In 3 hours, he had combat training. In 6 hours, he had tactical briefings. But right now, in the quiet darkness of the crew quarters, all he could think about was whether he would survive the coming battle. His father had fought in the HFY War. The old man never talked about it much, but Danny had seen the scars. Physical ones on his body and deeper ones in his eyes. Sometimes his father would wake up screaming, trapped in nightmares from decades ago. Can't sleep either, a voice said from the next bunk. Danny turned to see Sergeant Maya Torres pulling herself through the zero gravity toward the observation window. She was older than him, maybe 30, with the kind of confidence that came from real experience. First combat deployment, Danny admitted. I keep running scenarios in my head. What if I freeze up? What if I get my wingmates killed? Maya looked out at the stars. You know what my instructor told me before my first real fight? He said everyone's scared. The brave ones just don't let the fear stop them from doing their job. Were you scared? Danny asked. Terrified, Maya said with a slight smile. We were boarding a pirate vessel. I remember my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold my rifle. But then the door opened and training took over. My body knew what to do even when my brain was screaming. Danny thought about that. The Krathul aren't pirates, though. They're a proper military force. They've conquered 17 systems. True, Maya agreed. But they've been conquering peaceful species. Civilizations that don't have real weapons, that don't know how to fight. They're bullies! And bullies get real scared when someone punches back harder. She gestured at the fleet around them. Through the window they could see dozens of massive warships traveling in formation. Each one bristled with weapons that could crack planets. Those Krathul have no idea what's coming. They think they're the apex predators. They're about to meet something that evolved on a death world. On the bridge of the Revenant, Admiral Claire Donovan was studying the latest intelligence reports. They had been picking up scattered transmissions from the Valara system. Most were too broken to understand. But the pieces she could decipher painted a grim picture. The Krathul had orbital superiority. They controlled the space around the planet and were systematically destroying any resistance on the ground. The few Valara defense ships had been wiped out in the first day. Now it was just slaughter and enslavement. Captain Ben Hayes entered the bridge carrying a datapad. Admiral, we've finished analyzing Krathul combat tactics. They rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. Their ships have heavy frontal armor but weaker sides and rear sections. They tend to form tight formations and charge directly at their targets. Claire nodded. They win through shock and awe. Hit hard, hit fast, make the enemy panic. Exactly, Ben confirmed. It works great against species that aren't prepared for violence. But their tactics are predictable. If we can exploit their formation habits, we can tear them apart. What do you recommend? Claire asked. Ben brought up a tactical display. We jump in at the edge of the system, just close enough for sensors to pick us up. Let them see us coming. They'll form up for their standard charge. When they commit to the attack, we split the fleet. Half goes high, half goes low. We catch them in a crossfire from angles their armor can't protect. Claire considered the plan. It was risky. If the Krathul didn't take the bait, if they changed their tactics, the fleet could be split and vulnerable. But it was also brilliant in its simplicity. Make it happen, she ordered. Brief all ship captains. I want everyone to know their role before we arrive. Down in the engineering section, Lucas Wright was having problems. The quantum disruptors were working, but the power consumption was higher than predicted. If they fired at full capacity for more than 6 hours, the reactors would start to fail. He explained this to Commander Lisa Grant, who looked worried. 6 hours? Ben's tactical models predict the battle could last 8 to 10 hours if the Krathul have as many ships as we think. I know, Lucas said. I can push the reactors harder, but it increases the risk of catastrophic failure. And by catastrophic, I mean the ship explodes and takes everything within 10,000 kilometers with it. Lisa rubbed her temples. Can you give me 7 hours? 7 hours of reliable quantum disruptor fire? Lucas ran the calculations in his head. 7 hours at 80% power. Not full capacity, but enough to do serious damage. I'll take it, Lisa said. Tell the Admiral. The days blended together as the fleet traveled through the dark. Crew members trained constantly. Fighter pilots ran simulation after simulation. Marines practiced boarding procedures. Engineers checked and rechecked every system. Danny Cole became friends with Maya Torres during this time. They would meet in the observation lounge after their shifts, talking about home, about family, about anything except the battle they were flying toward. I have a little brother, Maya said one evening. He's 16. Thinks he wants to join the military when he's old enough. I told him he's crazy. Why? Danny asked. Because I've seen what war does to people, Maya replied. Even small conflicts, pirate raids, smuggler shootouts. People die in stupid ways. Good people, and the ones who survive carry it forever. She was quiet for a moment. But I also told him that sometimes violence is necessary. Sometimes the only way to stop evil people is to fight them. I just wish it wasn't true, Danny understood. His father had said something similar once. The thing about being from Earth, the old man had explained, is we know how to survive. Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. We adapted. We became survivors. And when we have to fight, we fight like our lives depend on it. Because they always have. Halfway through the journey, they received another transmission from the Valara system. This one was clearer, more recent. Elder Solera's voice came through, weaker now, defeated. To anyone listening, this is likely our final message. The Krathul have taken our cities. Most of our people are dead or enslaved. We accept our fate. We only hope that someday, someone will remember we existed, that we were a peaceful people who valued life and beauty. Please remember us. The transmission ended. The bridge crew sat in silence. Claire Donovan felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. She had heard messages like that before during the Cathari War. Entire civilizations erased from existence, their final words echoing into the void. How long until we reach the system? She asked. 4 days, Admiral, the navigation officer replied. Push the engines, Claire ordered. I want to be there in 3 days. Maximum speed. Admiral, that will strain the quantum drives, Lisa warned over the intercom. We might not have full combat power when we arrive. I don't care, Claire said flatly. Every hour we delay is another hour those people suffer. Push the engines, the fleet accelerated. The ships groaned and shook as the quantum drives were pushed beyond their recommended limits. Engineers worked frantically to keep systems from failing, but the fleet kept moving, racing against time. In the fighter bay, Danny Cole was running a final maintenance check on his craft when Chief Pilot Karen White approached him. You nervous, Lieutenant? She asked. Yes, ma'am, Danny admitted. But I'm ready. Karen nodded approvingly. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember your training and trust your AI co-pilot. These fighters are designed to keep you alive even when everything goes wrong. She paused. And Danny, when we get there, when the shooting starts, don't think about the big picture. Don't think about strategy or politics. Just focus on your wingmates. Keep them safe. They'll keep you safe. That's how we all get through this. On the final day of the journey, Admiral Donovan addressed the entire fleet one last time. In a few hours, we'll drop out of quantum travel at the edge of the Valara system. The enemy outnumbers us 3 to 1. They have the advantage of position and preparation. By every tactical standard, this should be an impossible fight. She let that sink in before continuing. But we have something they don't. We're from Earth. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We're survivors. We're problem solvers. And when we fight, we don't fight fair. We fight to win. Her voice hardened. The Krathul Dominion thinks they're conquerors. They think might makes right. Today we're going to teach them a lesson. We're going to show them what happens when they pick on the wrong species. All hands, battle stations. We're going in. The Ghost Fleet dropped out of quantum travel, and ahead of them the Valara system waited. Somewhere in that system, innocent people were dying, and now finally help had arrived. The Ghost Fleet emerged from quantum space at the edge of the Valara system like avenging angels. For a brief moment, there was perfect silence. Then every sensor on every Krathul ship started screaming warnings. Commander Zrath of the Krathul 3rd Battle Fleet stared at his displays in confusion. 30 massive contacts had just appeared on sensors. Unknown ship types. Unknown energy signatures. They shouldn't be here. This was conquered space. The Valara had no allies. No one answered distress calls anymore. That's why the Krathul were so successful. They picked on the weak and alone. Identify those ships, Zrath ordered. His sensor officer worked frantically. Commander, the database has no records of these designs. Wait, there's an old flag designation coming through. They're claiming to be from Earth. Human vessels. Zrath's scales rippled with what might have been laughter. Humans, the myths. The extinct primitives? He turned to his communications officer. Broadcast a warning. Tell them to leave immediately or be destroyed. Foolish creatures. On the bridge of the Revenant, Admiral Claire Donovan received the Krathul warning and smiled coldly. No response. Let them wonder. All ships proceed to attack Formation Beta. Launch fighters. The Ghost Fleet split smoothly into 2 groups. 20 ships angled upward, 10 ships angled downward. Between them, space erupted with hundreds of small craft as the fighter squadrons deployed. Lieutenant Danny Cole felt his stomach drop as his fighter launched from the carrier bay. One moment he was secured in the hangar, the next he was in open space with nothing but his ship between him and the void. His AI co-pilot spoke in a calm voice. All systems operational. Weapons armed. Linking with squadron network. Lieutenant Cole, you are designated Reaper 3. Stay in formation. Danny could see the other fighters around him. Tiny points of light against the darkness. Chief Pilot Karen White's voice came through the squadron channel. Reaper Squadron, we're going for their communication arrays first. Make them blind and deaf. Follow my lead. The fighters accelerated toward the Krathul fleet. Danny had never moved so fast in his life. The G-forces tried to crush him even with the inertial dampeners. His AI co-pilot kept feeding him information. Enemy ship positions. Weapons range. Optimal attack vectors. The Krathul fleet began to turn, forming up exactly as Captain Ben Hayes had predicted. They pulled into a tight formation, preparing their traditional charge attack. 200 warships pointing at the Ghost Fleet like a spear. They're taking the bait, Ben reported from the tactical station. Admiral, they're committing. Claire watched the tactical display. The Krathul were so confident. They had won so many easy victories that they couldn't imagine losing. All ships execute crossfire pattern. Fire when ready. The Ghost Fleet opened fire. The quantum disruptors on the dreadnoughts unleashed hell. Space itself seemed to tear open as the weapons activated. The first Krathul ships hit by the disruptors simply ceased to exist. Their atoms were ripped apart at the quantum level, scattered across dimensions. Commander Zrath watched in horror as 5 of his cruisers vanished from sensors. Just gone, not destroyed, not damaged, gone. What kind of weapons are those? Return fire! All ships, return fire! The Krathul fleet unleashed their plasma cannons. Massive bolts of superheated matter crossed space toward the human ships. Most missed. The Ghost Fleet was moving in patterns the Krathul couldn't predict, constantly shifting position. The few shots that connected splashed against shields that shouldn't exist according to Krathul. Understanding of physics. Their shields are adapting to our weapons, Zrath's tactical officer reported. Sir, these humans have technology we've never seen before. Reaper Squadron reached the Krathul command carrier. Danny locked onto one of the massive communication towers on the ship's hull. His AI co-pilot calculated the shot. Fire now, the calm voice instructed. Danny pressed the trigger. His railgun spat a stream of magnetically accelerated projectiles. They tore through the communication tower like it was made of paper. Explosions rippled across the Krathul ship's hull. All around him, other fighters were hitting their targets. Within 2 minutes, the Krathul fleet had lost most of its ability to coordinate. Ships were calling for orders that never came. The perfect formation began to fall apart. Reaper Squadron, reform and attack the engine clusters, Karen White ordered. Let's make sure they can't run away. On the Krathul slave ship designated Prison Barge 7, Sergeant Maya Torres and her Marine squad breached the hull. They had launched from a destroyer in boarding pods, small armored craft designed to punch through ship hulls and deliver troops directly into enemy vessels. The impact was violent. Maya's teeth rattled in her skull despite the shock absorption. Then the pod's front opened and she was moving, rifle up, scanning for targets. The Krathul guards were huge, 8 feet tall with scales-like armor. But they were also surprised. They hadn't expected anyone to board their ship in the middle of a battle. Maya's squad opened fire. The heavy rounds from their rifles could punch through Krathul scales. The guards went down before they could react. "Move, move, move!" Major Pete Carson shouted. "Find the prison cells." They fought through the corridors. The Krathul were tough, but humans from Earth were tougher. Maya had grown up in Earth's 1.3 gravity. These ship corridors felt light to her. She moved faster than the Krathul expected. When one guard tried to grab her with his massive clawed hand, she ducked under it and put 3 rounds through his throat. They found the cells on the lower deck, thousands of Valara huddled in cages, their insectoid bodies pressed together. Many were injured. Some were dead. When they saw the human Marines, they didn't know whether to be more afraid or hopeful. Maya blasted the lock on the nearest cell. "We're here to get you out. Come on, move." Back in space, the battle was turning into a massacre. The Krathul fleet, so confident just minutes ago, was being systematically destroyed. The Ghost Fleet's tactics were too unpredictable. Their weapons were too powerful. And worst of all, the humans fought with a ferocity that terrified the Krathul warriors. Captain Ben Hayes directed the attack with surgical precision. Every weakness in the Krathul formation was exploited. When they tried to concentrate their fire, the human ships scattered. When they tried to retreat, the human destroyers cut off their escape routes. The Krathul flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Conqueror's Fist, tried to flee. Commander Zarath had finally understood the truth. These weren't primitives. These were apex predators. His empire had picked a fight with something from a nightmare. "Full power to engines," he ordered. "We need to get out of this system. We need to warn the Dominion." But the Revenant was faster. Admiral Donovan's ship intercepted the fleeing flagship. For a moment, the 2 massive vessels faced each other. Claire opened a communication channel. "Krathul Commander, this is Admiral Claire Donovan of the United Human Space Navy. You are guilty of attacking a peaceful civilization without provocation. You have enslaved and murdered innocent beings. I am authorized to offer you one chance to surrender. Your crew will be taken prisoner and tried for war crimes. Refuse and you will be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to decide." Zarath looked at the human ship on his screen. It was smaller than his flagship, but somehow more menacing. In his culture, surrender was worse than death. Warriors who surrendered brought shame to their entire bloodline. "The Krathul Dominion does not surrender to inferiors." He broadcast back. "We are the conquerors. We are the strong. We will crush you, human. We will find your homeworld and burn it to ash. We will enslave your children and feast on their—" Claire cut the transmission. "Pathetic. Helm, move us back 5,000 kilometers. Weapons, fire the main quantum disruptor. Maximum power." Lucas Wright, monitoring the reactor from engineering, saw the power draw spike. "Admiral, firing at maximum power violates every safety protocol we have." "Fire the weapon, Mr. Wright," Claire said coldly. The quantum disruptor on the Revenant channeled enough power to supply a planet. Space warped around the weapon. For a brief instant, observers could see something impossible, a tear in reality itself. Then the beam crossed the distance to the Krathul flagship. The Conqueror's Fist didn't explode. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. 2,000 Krathul warriors vanished in an instant. The remaining Krathul ships saw their flagship disappear. That broke them. They scattered, trying to flee in every direction. But there was nowhere to run. The Ghost Fleet had them surrounded. Some Krathul ships managed to activate their faster-than-light drives and escaped. Admiral Donovan let them go. She wanted survivors. She wanted the Krathul Dominion to hear what happened here. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 183 Krathul ships were destroyed or captured. Only 17 escaped. The Ghost Fleet lost 2 destroyers and 47 fighters. 312 human crew members gave their lives. Danny Cole made it back to his carrier. His fighter was damaged, hull scorched by near misses, but he was alive. As he climbed out of the cockpit, his legs shook so badly he almost fell. Chief Pilot Karen White caught him. You did good, Lieutenant, she said. Real good. Maya Torres and her Marines returned from the slave ship with over 2,000 rescued Valara. The aliens stared at their human rescuers with The cleanup after the battle took 3 days. Human medical teams descended to Valara Prime and started treating the wounded. Engineers helped repair damaged infrastructure. Marines secured weapons caches the Krathul had left behind. And slowly, carefully, the humans began to interact with the people they had saved. Elder Solara stood on the landing platform where the first human shuttle had touched down. She had spent her entire life studying philosophy and art. Violence was something her people read about in cautionary histories. Now she was about to meet the beings who had saved her species with overwhelming force. Admiral Claire Donovan stepped off the shuttle. She was shorter than Solara expected. Humans were compact creatures built solid and dense. Claire's eyes were gray and tired. She looked like someone who had seen too much war. Elder Solara, Claire said through a translation device. I'm glad to meet you under better circumstances than your distress call. Solara's mandibles clicked nervously. Admiral Donovan, my people owe you everything. We called out in desperation, never truly believing anyone would answer. You came across the galaxy to save strangers. We have no way to repay this debt. Claire shook her head. There's no debt. You don't owe us anything. We came because it was the right thing to do. But your people died in the battle, Solara said. 300 of your warriors gave their lives for us. How can we not owe you for that sacrifice? Claire was quiet for a moment. She looked up at the sky where the ghost fleet orbited. Those 300 died protecting innocent people from murderers. That's what we signed up for. That's what being in the military means. They knew the risks. Solara studied the human admiral. You are a warrior species. Violence comes naturally to you. Yet you use that violence to protect others. I do not understand how both things can be true. Neither do we sometimes, Claire admitted. Humans are complicated. We're capable of terrible things. The weapons we used in that battle, the quantum disruptors, they tear apart reality itself. We built them during a war when we were desperate and angry. We're not proud of what we're capable of. She gestured at the city around them, still smoking from Krathul bombardment. But we're also capable of this. Of traveling across the galaxy because strangers needed help. Of risking our lives for people we've never met. Maybe those two sides of us are connected. Maybe you have to understand violence to truly value peace. The conversation was interrupted by Captain Ben Hayes approaching. Admiral, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. News of the battle is spreading fast, Claire nodded. I expected that. The Krathul ships that escaped are probably telling everyone who will listen about what happened here. It's more than that, Ben said. The Valara transmitted recordings of the battle. Every species within 100 light years now knows that humanity is back. And they're either very grateful or very nervous. That was a problem Claire had anticipated. For 100 years, humanity had been the boogeyman of the galaxy, the species that built weapons too terrible to use, the Deathworlders who fought wars with cold efficiency. When humanity withdrew after the Cathari War, most civilizations had been relieved. Now humanity had announced their return with overwhelming force. The galaxy would have questions. And fears. Lieutenant Danny Cole was in the pilot's lounge when he heard the news. He was trying to process everything that had happened. The battle had been nothing like the simulations. It had been chaos and terror and moments of pure adrenaline. He had killed people. Enemy pilots who were probably just following orders like he was. That thought kept him awake at night. You okay? Sergeant Maya Torres asked, sitting down next to him. I don't know, Danny said honestly. We won. We saved these people. But I keep thinking about the Krathul fighters I shot down. Were they evil? Were they just soldiers doing their jobs? Maya nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. I killed 12 Krathul guards during the boarding action. Some of them looked scared when they saw us coming, like they didn't want to be there. She was quiet for a moment. But I also saw what they did to those Valara prisoners. The conditions in those cells, the injuries from beatings and torture, the children separated from their parents. So yeah, maybe those guards were just following orders. But they were following evil orders. And sometimes you have to stop evil, even if it means doing violent things. Danny understood the logic, but understanding didn't make it easier to live with. Chief White told me something, Maya continued. She said the day killing becomes easy as the day you stop being human. The guilt, the doubt, the nightmares, those are the things that prove we're still good people. Monsters don't lose sleep over their actions. In the Revenant's engineering section, Lucas Wright was running diagnostics on the quantum disruptors. The weapons had performed beyond expectations, but the stress on the reactors had been enormous. They would need complete overhauls before the fleet could engage in another major battle. Commander Lisa Grant reviewed his reports. "How long until we're combat ready again?" "Minimum 2 months," Lucas said. "That's working around the clock. Some of these components need to be fabricated from scratch." Lisa sighed. "Let's hope we don't need to fight again that soon." News continued to pour in from across the galaxy. The Krathul Dominion had gone completely silent. Their expansion had stopped. Intelligence suggested they were pulling back to fortified positions, terrified that the humans might come for them next. Other species were reaching out to Earth with diplomatic overtures. The peaceful civilizations wanted alliances, protection agreements, trade deals. The aggressive empires were suddenly very interested in non-aggression pacts. Everyone wanted to know what humanity wanted, what their intentions were. Admiral Donovan received orders from Earth Command. Return home immediately for debriefing. The political situation was developing rapidly, and they needed her input on how to handle it. But before leaving, Claire called a meeting with Elder Solara and the Valara Council. "My people want to know what happens now," Solara said. "Will humanity stay? Will you protect the galaxy from aggressors?" Claire chose her words carefully. "We didn't come here to become galactic police. We came because you needed help and we could provide it. What happens next is complicated." She pulled up a star chart showing the local sector. "For 100 years, humanity stayed home because we were tired of war. We were tired of being seen only as weapons. We wanted to be more than that. But we also can't ignore distress calls from innocent people being slaughtered." "So you will help others?" Solara asked hopefully. "If we can," Claire said. "But understand, the Ghost Fleet is expensive to operate. Every battle costs lives. We can't be everywhere at once. We can't solve every problem with force." Captain Ben Hayes spoke up. "What we can do is make clear that attacking peaceful civilizations will have consequences." The Krathul learned that lesson. Other empires will think twice now before starting wars of conquest. Solara considered this. "You will be watchers in the dark. A deterrent." "Something like that," Claire agreed. "Humanity isn't interested in building an empire. We don't want to rule over anyone, but we won't let bullies destroy innocent species either. That's the balance we're trying to find." The meeting ended with the Valara expressing eternal gratitude. They promised to remember what humanity had done, to share the story with anyone who would listen. Solara gave Claire a gift, a beautiful crystalline sculpture representing hope rising from darkness. The Ghost Fleet prepared to depart. Engineers completed emergency repairs. Injured crew members were stabilized for the journey home. The recovered Valara prisoners were settled in temporary housing on the planet's surface. Lieutenant Danny Cole stood at the observation window, watching the planet below. In a few hours they would jump back to Earth, back to debriefings and ceremonies and questions about what they had done. But for now he just watched the world they had saved. Sergeant Maya Torres joined him. "Thinking deep thoughts?" "Just wondering if we did the right thing," Danny said. "We used weapons that could destroy planets. We killed thousands of Krathul. Was it worth it?" Maya pointed at the planet. "See those lights? Those are cities that would have been ash if we hadn't shown up. Those are millions of people who get to live because we fought. Yeah, we used terrible weapons. Yeah, we killed the enemy. But the alternative was letting innocent people die. So yes, we did the right thing." On the bridge, Admiral Claire Donovan gave the order to depart. The Ghost Fleet broke orbit and headed for the jump point. Behind them, the Valara broadcast a message of thanks across all frequencies. The recording of that message, along with the battle footage, was already spreading across the galaxy. The 17 Krathul ships that escaped the battle had returned to their home system. They reported to the Dominion Council with shaking voices. The humans were real. The legends were true. They had technology that seemed like magic and fought with the efficiency of machines but the creativity of living beings. The Krathul Council issued immediate orders. All expansion operations ceased. All forces pulled back to defensive positions. Under no circumstances were any human vessels to be engaged. The Dominion had built its power on attacking the weak. They wanted nothing to do with the strong. Similar conversations were happening in government chambers across